Okay. Good morning. Oh. Good morning. All right. Today, we are going to hop into talking about, let's just say this one is a doozy. And this one is a doozy because it asks for us to let go of something that can be very difficult to let go of. And that is our need to be right, our defenses. Let me just get set up here. Today we're talking about peace. We're talking about peace, and we're talking about conflict. The path to peace. You know, I always talk about this. I talk about in the keys, there are words that we can come into contact with across all the different gene keys. And some of these words, some of these words, maybe we have a relationship with already. And, you know, we have some sort of a relationship with the word peace, or even the word diplomacy, or even the word conflict. I find that this key naturally invites us into the territory. I mean, I remember when I was first looking at this key, it's like, oh, okay, like war, conflict, diplomacy, peace sounds very, very much so in that sphere. Yet, you know, and then there are other keys, other words across the gene keys where the words, when you look at them, they have a distinction that it's like, I've never seen that word before. I've never even just thought of that word before. It's not something that I use on an everyday basis. And I've found that the words that we have built a relationship with across our lives can actually be a little bit more difficult to lean into than the ones that we haven't built a relationship with. Primarily because part of what we have to do when we build a relationship with some of these words that we think we know involves us letting go of what we think we know about them. What we've been told is the path to peace. You know, everybody and their mother's got the solution, the key of the path to peace. This is just what we have to do. We just do this and there will be peace. Or for others, maybe it feels like there's just a big hopeless endeavor wrapped up around this elusive concept of peace. What is peace? How do we attain peace? And especially when you look at the gift here, the gift of diplomacy. You know, if somebody pulls up their Gene Keys chart, and they're like, oh, one of my main gifts is the gift of diplomacy. Probably, unless you're actually a diplomat, you might look at that and be like, that sounds kind of lame or not so exciting. How come I don't have that, the gift of imagination or the gift of like initiative or something, you know, maybe that strikes more of a chord of something that has less wrapped up around it. And I think that that is a beautiful entry point with this key, because diplomacy has gotten a really bad rap. It's got an extraordinarily bad rap because it doesn't seem to really do anything. It doesn't seem to work. And frankly, anything that we have come into approach with as a culture, as society across the world stage in the realm of diplomacy often seems like there's 30,000 behind the scenes back alley handshake deals that are corrupting and plaguing anything that anybody hears about and the news lines. And so diplomacy just kind of seems like this weird, twisted way of trying to get what you want, winner takes all type of mentality through coercion, pressure, blackmail, force, all of these types of, things that happen to get what you want. And that's supposed to be the path to peace. And so this key is absolutely a key that invites us to start to unravel what we've been taught about diplomacy, what we've been taught about how to broker peace, and maybe start over, maybe start and find a new way into this. And so to play on the motif with peace and war and the shadow of conflict, this key has a lot to do, and this key's journey has a lot to do with our relationship with defense. And even though we're starting in the territory, as I'm talking about this, we're starting in the territory of talking about like world stage diplomacy and world stage defense and the meaning of the word defense in that territory, we're going to bring it back inside to ourselves, because that's the only space that peace is ever going to sprout and begin the true path towards peace that will sweep across the culture. It's not going to come through, top down blanket handshake deals. Oh, great. Like those two presidents just shook hands and made a deal. Great. That's it. We finally have peace. No, it has to come from inside ourselves first. And so if we look at the world stage and we look at the war fronts and we look at the twisted relationship that we have with this concept called defense and how much money we spend on defense, let's look up the United States defense budget. Let's see. Around $1.15 trillion. 1.5 trillion total. We're in the trillions. Let's see what Google tells us, like estimated global spending on defense. I mean, it's probably a ridiculous number. How do you even encapsulate that? Global military expenditure nearly reached a record high of $2.9 trillion. 2.9 trillion. That's of what we're told. That's the number that we're told. It's probably like 5 times that. And here people are struggling to buy a meal, a lunch under $15, you know? And so I think starting and looking in that territory, like, here is how much the world economy spends on defense. And how does that relate with our own relationship internally as individuals with our sense of defensiveness and how we interface with conflict in our lives? You know, if we bring it one step further inside and outside of this global scene and looking at the obvious conflict between nations and wars and the very like brute force on the nose definition of conflict in those terms, and we bring that conflict into where does conflict exist for me in my personal life. Obviously, for some people, that literally means like the conflict is that I'm immersed in a war zone. But even still, for those people and for most people in the world, that conflict exists in the day-to-day relationally with one another. Our conflict with our fellow human, our partner, our family, people at work, people around us. And this conflict emerges in the lens of this gene key. The shadow of conflict emerges simply through our relationship, our twisted relationship with our need to defend ourselves and to defend our own emotional state in the presence of some form of an activation with another. And it's like every argument is like a little war, and how we wage these wars upon one another. And all of the arsenal, all of the units, all of the ammunition that we deploy in the everyday, day-to-day conflicts with one another relationally. And to stay with me in this metaphor, it's how much are we investing subconsciously due to our patterns? How much are we investing subconsciously due to our underlying patterns in defending ourselves and in being prepared to wage a full-on attack of defense when we feel threatened, when our own need to defend our position, defend our rightness, defend our emotional state coming into conflict with someone else's emotional state? What are we building up in order to wage that battle within ourselves? That's the entry point in all of this, is understanding how much we're consciously and subconsciously spending on defense within ourselves. And as with any gene key, this shadow, it's a seed. The seed is the beginning. That seed wants to be watered and wants to be nurtured for it to reveal something new. This is where this is not a journey of getting rid of a shadow or getting rid of conflict. We need to just get rid of all of the people or all of the circumstances or all of the things that create conflict. It's instead, how do we meet the conflict at its depth? How do we meet the conflict for what it's actually asking for from us? Because deep down, any of those impulses to contribute and be a service member in the dynamic that's twisted and toxic around our relationship with defense within our lives comes from a source root within ourselves of different patterns deep beneath the surface that, like different bombs beneath the surface that we haven't diffused within ourselves. And if we haven't gone and diffused those bombs within ourselves, then naturally somebody comes along and trips them. And now it's like, oh, war's on. Let's go. It's time to unleash the arsenal upon this person. And so when you look at the range of the expression of that shadow, of that conflict, the victim of our emotions, and the range of how that comes online and expresses for us is, as with every shadow, there's a repressive bent where we turn inwardly upon ourselves. That conflict is turned inwardly upon ourselves. And that is called over-attentive. That over-attentiveness looks like where we're actually so terrified of conflict with somebody else that we wage war inwardly upon ourselves and the way that we really feel in order to try to keep the peace. This is classic people pleasing. This is people pleasing through and through. And the fullest definition of people pleasing in trying to maintain this peace relationally around you in order to not need to deal with the emotional load that comes with facing conflict. And when I say deal with the emotional load, it is the illusory false belief around how challenging or difficult that is going to be. And it's like, I'd rather not deal with that at all. Likely, probably, because in different parts of our lives, we've dealt with conflict where it was really, it really hurt us. The emotional warfare that we experienced in our home, in our upbringing, in society, was too much for our nervous systems, was too much for us. There was no sense of a sense of protection. And maybe that that impacted us so much that we then have committed and vowed internally within ourselves, like, that was really intense. I'm going to make sure that that never happens again. And so I'm going to really sense the tripwires. I'm going to sense the tripwires within other people as they're approaching those spaces, about to blow up and activate. And I'm going to be somebody who's going to go and diffuse all of those as best I can, even if it means that I am waging war internally upon myself and my own sense of peace internally. And, it's cool to also see some of these other aspects, like astrologically Virgo. It's like Virgo and its organizational gifts. It's like trying to go and diffuse all of these different bombs around us relationally to prevent any semblance of relational emotional warfare in our environment, to our utter detriment. And boy, when you repress that impulse to really just speak honestly your truth and hold your own boundary and trust in your heart in certain circumstances, despite whatever anybody else is going to do, then we're essentially sending a signal to a young part of ourselves that's like, hey, just, shut up, keep the peace, and everything's going to be all right. Meanwhile, that young part that has been muffled is like, I'm suffering down here. I can't keep doing things like this anymore. People are walking all over me. People are bulldozing me. People are using me as the scapegoat for all of the things in their lives. And here we are, just like taking it. And it's like, how many blows can someone take? And so that's the over-attentive bent. It's where we've said, we're so terrified of pointing any semblance of emotional ammunition towards anybody else And so we're just going to allow all of that to get stuffed down inside ourselves in the hopes that that will bring peace. Everybody just shut the F up. Everybody just shut the F up and it will be good. And it doesn't really work like that because internally everybody still has the ticking bombs, and everybody has to do something with them. And you can't just stuff it down into a corner and expect that that's not going to blow up in some way, shape, or form. The other bent, tactless would look like trigger happy. I have no problem unleashing my emotional load in all of these different directions and spaces out of a gesture to myself that I'm defending what's right. I'm defending what's right and what's true. And therefore, I do not care whether I am mowing down, laying waste to anybody around me, because I believe that by me being honoring that within myself, this is like advanced language. Most people, it's just like the tripwire is so short. It's like the fuse is so short. It's ready to ignite and blow up at any moment. And this illusory tactic of, well, let me just eliminate any threat, and that will then end the conflict. Does that sound a little bit like what might be happening in the world right now? Well, we just need to eliminate that threat, and then there will be peace. So on the one side, I mean, it's like, this is the territory. It's like, on the one side, it's like, well, let's just let everybody walk all over me. And here's the other thing. This key has a lot to do with our relationship. It's the key. It's the archetypal energy that gave rise to boundaries and borders, nation states. So you have the conquested and you have the conquest. The conquested is the over-attentive. It says, hey, come on through, everybody, just walk all over everything that's here. I'm gonna just keep the peace, and I'm not gonna say anything about this because I might hurt somebody's feelings. I don't wanna hurt anybody's feelings. Does this sound like a lot like what might be happening in different spaces around the world? I don't wanna hurt anybody's feelings, and so I'm just gonna let everybody walk all over. Do what they want. I'm here to keep the peace. That's the path to peace. Open the door to my home and let everybody just walk all over me. That is only conducting warfare upon yourself. It is a repression of your own connection with how you care for yourself in the false name of keeping the peace. Because if you're actually honest with yourself, that's not what's happening. You're just taking on all of that energy and stuffing it into corners until maybe one day you just blow. Or you become so paralyzed by the fear that you've lost any sense of being able to be sensitized to what's actually happening. This is happening in the world right now. And what's also happening in the world right now is that tactless bent, which says we just need to eliminate that threat, and then there will be peace. There's the threat. Those people are the threat. We have to just literally eliminate them, and then there will be peace. How long have we been telling ourselves that? as a culture? How many hundreds or thousands of years have we been telling ourselves that? That's that tactless approach. That's that approach that says the threat to my peace exists somewhere outside of me, and I have to eliminate those threats to my peace. So give us the money and let's go and let's eliminate it. And let's have a parade and say, we eliminated this threat to our safety, our peace, with zero regard for the emotional state of the other on the other end of the scope. This is why I say this key is a doozy, because it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? On the one side, it sounds terrible just opening my door and letting all of that just walk all over me and impact me and my family, my community. And on the other end, it's like, well, eliminating that and taking the other bent, eliminating that doesn't sound very reparative either. But this is the tug of war that you'll see across the world stage, in the realm of conflict, in the realm of the dynamics among nation states and borders. And deep down, deep in the deepest of hearts, people are craving this sense of peace. Don't want to fight anymore. How do we live in peace? But how do we live in peace if these seem like the only options? To either lose ourselves as a nation or to destroy others, in the hopes that quells the uprising, quells the threat. And so with every key, there's this journey of looking at the chessboard and being like, this is a rigged game. This is rigged. It's never going to take you there in either direction. It will just, they're equal and opposite forces that will continue to wage warfare upon one another over and over and over again, in this illusion and insanity that brings people into a space of thinking like that's going to get us anywhere. And so with all of these keys, when the time comes that we start to say, okay, hold on, let's flip the board upside down, look at it sideways. Let me get in touch with what's actually going on inside of me and being honest with myself about what's emotionally happening inside of me, this emotional warfare that I'm experiencing inside of me. I'm meeting that conflict. I'm sitting down at the table. This starts to become that gift of diplomacy. What is it in me that gets so charged to want to either let others walk all over me, or for me to establish a whole entire bunker around my life where I'm ready to throw the grenade at a moment's notice? Okay, here now I start to go and dig down into the territory of the emotional warfare that I've experienced in my life, from caretakers, from society, from all of these things, the times where I've felt that my sense of safety and really that my life may have been threatened. And getting in touch with that, wow, I'm sitting at the table with those parts of myself. Oof. Yeah. This is what this is bringing up for me. you know, what's happening in the migrant situation, is reflecting for me something around how somebody kind of just like walked all over me as a bully in school. And so therefore I'm taking more of this position of like, I'm gonna eliminate that threat. I want to eliminate that threat. And so let me put all of my chips in on this position of going and trying to eliminate that threat. Or maybe somebody else is like, I just was around so much screaming and yelling and in the household, and I really just I can't be around that anymore. I'd rather just like not say anything, because I wasn't able to say anything back then either. And so I'm just going to let what's happening happen and hope that by me just being a good person, me just, being more open and more accepting, that there will be an easing of the turmoil that I'm sensing out there around with other people. This is the work of this key of going into the territories within ourselves of where emotional warfare existed throughout our lives, sitting down at the table and coming into contact and touch with, it's like, as a diplomat, this is what I experienced in these situations in my life. This is where I was, I was on the other end of the scope of emotional warfare, or where I was sitting on the outside and I felt like I couldn't do anything while I was witnessing that warfare before my eyes. In some spaces, literally with actual bloodshed. And so we have to become that diplomat within ourselves. We have to sit at the table and we have to broker the peace within ourselves. We need to sit with the parts of ourselves that are still charged up, either holding on to the weapon, ready to fire, finger on the trigger, or the part of ourselves that's like so terrified of even touching anything in the vein of a weapon or some mechanism of self-defense because of what might happen. We sit down at the table and we come into contact with those parts. Say, hey, you were not able to defend yourself in that situation. And so here, I'm going to create the space. I'm going to create that border, that integrous border here for you to be able to feel what you need to feel right now. The rage, the anger, the grief, the fear, all of that. So, or, here's an opportunity for you to now speak up for yourself. And I've got your back. No matter what this other person or whatever anybody says, I've got your back, to that younger part. You never learned or were modeled how to speak up for yourself in a healthy way. And so here I'm gonna hold you and show you that I've got my hand on your shoulder while you maybe speak something really true and honestly, potentially knowing that may end certain relationships for you in your life. It may close certain doorways. It may open up a whole series of projections coming from somebody about them thinking you're a bad person or this or that. And this diplomacy, as Richard teaches about it, it's really that when you're able to hold that part within you without that tripwire getting crossed, because you've diffused it within yourself. It's not because you're repressing it and you're just holding it. It's because you have diffused the bomb within yourself by meeting the part of you that really needed that bomb diffused at a time where it was not, where it was going off. By you taking care of that part within yourself, that's the diplomat, that's the diplomacy. Then when you're in a circumstance relationally with somebody else where that conflict is emerging in the presence of somebody else, or even just inside of you, you're able to respond from a space of truth rather than from a space of the unconscious automatic pattern. And that response from that space of truth diffuses the situation. And it diffuses the situation, not by just making any reaction go away. This isn't like a magic wand of like the other person is not going to have any sort of reaction or response. But what it means is that you have essentially gotten up from the table of participating in warfare, and you've sat at the table of peace within yourself. And what that means is that for that other person who's still sitting at the table of warfare, barking and shouting or trying to, do whatever, that you're unimpacted by that emotionally. And you can sit over at the table of that peace in the calm wave, not because you forced it, because it's just true. And the other person is left to deal with their own conflict within themselves because they don't have the audience to perpetuate the cycle with them sitting at that table anymore. So they feel that conflict just circling back in on themselves. They don't have the adversary anymore there. They may think that they do, but it's not satiating that thing in them anymore, because you have moved out of participating in that circuitry. And so that those bombs that are sent off, they just kind of it's like return to sender. It just keeps on working on that person until that takes them into whatever direction it's going to take them on their own journey of facing their own internal warfare within themselves. And maybe even in some of those moments, right off the bat, just being like, wow, I'm actually just doing this to myself. And maybe there's like an apology that happens there. Sorry for putting you through that. That's the gift of diplomacy. It's where you are not continuing to consent to sit at that table of warfare, either as the perpetrator or as the muffled victim. And that emotional maturity that has come through by you having the courage, summoning the courage to go in and take care of the parts of you that were kind of scattered across the battlefield throughout your life. I never know what direction these are going to take when I start talking about these, because I obviously have a relationship with this key in my own right. I never grew up or existed in any sort of space that was immersed in like literal warfare, but I have been immersed in environments in my upbringing that would look like, emotional warfare. And, relationally growing up in partnership, all of that. And I find that for this key, it's like make love, not war. Like it's like this whole journey with peace. And I even think back to, a time period that I didn't live through, but, in the 70s and the Vietnam War and just these different movements, there was really an awakening period in that space. And I find that there was real truth in what was growing and expanding across an entire culture as a response to something that seemed just utterly horrific in the warfare, was this campaign for love, radical love and peace. And why did that fizzle out eventually? And why did we return to the space of where we are right now? Well, there was a velocity extent that woke people up from just this perpetual hamster wheel of like the war machine, but without having the depth of the roots in this journey of the inner work of uprooting all of these spaces inside of ourselves where we're still stuck in that inner warfare within ourselves. It's like it can't, that wave can't sustain itself without those roots being tended to. And so this is that journey, and this journey, as much as we would, as much as, me as a fellow human in my own right would love for there to be this like broad campaign of peace, cultural movement and wave that really revives some of the spirit of what was even happening in the 70s, just from an energetic standpoint. There's this knowing deep within me in my own experience around this, that the only pathway that's going to bring ourselves to a space of everlasting peace involves us each going into the war zone within ourselves. This is where some people will even talk about these times and what's happening right now, that like World War III is the war that's taking place on the inside. It's a war on consciousness. I believe that deeply. And there's as much as it may look like there are territories out there in the world that are in an active war zone, and that is absolutely true, and people are absolutely subjected to that. The warfare that we're immersed in right now is global. It is a global war zone in the territory of our consciousness. And this is where, for me, myself, I look at my own journey of contributing to this pathway of peace in these times is continuing to diffuse the bombs within myself. It starts literally in the kitchen. It starts in the kitchen with your family. It starts in the way that you even see something on social media and the way that you feel whatever response to that within yourself around, oh, it's right that those people are eliminated, or it's right that those people get to, do whatever they want. Like it starts there, and what's happening inside ourselves. Bringing it back to, what is this bringing up for me? And this isn't some like love and light, peace bullshit. This is like, by avoiding the conflict head on, by just, saying our prayers and doing our spiritual practice. It's anything but that. It's actually just witnessing within ourselves. The only way that any of us are going to be able to respond with a sense of clarity to what is happening in the world is going to come from the stilling of the wave inside of our hearts. And so for these final minutes here, 10 minutes or so, I want to talk a little bit about peace and this whole journey where we've been talking about defense. And as Richard always speaks with the Gene Keys, there's a leap. It's like a quantum leap from the gift to the city always. And that leap involves a death. It involves the death of the separate self. And this key of peace, and the city of peace, invites us into the deeper space of the true illusory nature of defense in and of its entirety. That nothing or no one can ever hurt you or even take your life because you are not separate from anybody else. At the deepest level, we are one unified field of consciousness, and therefore there's no perpetrator to take your life, because that would imply that there would be a separate individual from you. And we can hear that, and our mind can take that in two ways. Our mind can take that in a way that's like, oh yeah, that's true, we're all one, And then it's like somebody busts down your door. It's like, it's like great to mentally think that we are all one. But then how do you relate with that when push comes to shove? The other side of what the mind might experience when hearing something like that is like, that's just a spiritual bypass, that's like that takes on a perspective that there's just like nothing we should do. Oh, we shouldn't defend ourselves or anything like that. And that is not what this is about. And also, I'm just going to say, as always, when I get into the territory of the city, who knows? I'm still on my own journey with all this. This is you're hearing this from the microphone of a man who is also reckoning with his own conscious and unconscious recognition of his participation in the illusion of separation. And so what does it mean to drop all defenses? What does it mean to drop all borders within ourselves? This key has a lot to do with and if somebody's working with this key, you might come into contact with your relationship with your skin. Because your skin is it's the ultimate border. And in these bodies, moving around in space in these bodies, our skin gives a sense of this, there's a definition, there's a threshold where I end and you begin. We're in bodies that would, through that lens of separation, suggest that to us when we look at ourselves that way. This is all of who I am, is just right here, everything that's wrapped within this skin. And then I love those classic takes. It's like, okay, if you take off your arm and then you put your arm off to the side, like, are you in that anymore? Okay, no, there's your skin, but you weren't in that, or you're not in that anymore. So where are you? This is like that whole space of starting to entertain and play with, like, where is the seat of consciousness? Is it just in my brain? does the seed of consciousness exist beyond what's just enclosed in this skin, in this body? And so part of my own practice with this key literally looks like finding the way toward diffusing the bomb in any moment where I can sense the conflict, not out of a space of shutting myself up and maintaining the peace in toxic people-pleasing behavior, but from a space of I am going to tend always to the part inside of me that's getting activated and tripped up by something that is happening in my environment relationally, etc. My ability to recognize that frequency, that signature of conflict as it arises, and immediately not make it about the other person, but make it about what's happening inside of me, my ability to go, the more that I can shorten that gap of there's the activation of the conflict and there's my journey of catching my consciousness of wanting to project outward around that person being the issue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and bringing it backward into me and getting in touch with the part of me that got defensive in that moment and taking care of him naturally unlocks an aroma around me of peace more and more. And in time, that journey from the gift to the city, it's this unplanned leap where the whole nature of needing to go through any sort of defensiveness or defense mechanism within myself lets go, where my own relationship with my consciousness as being something separate from anything around me eventually lets go. And I find that the way that I've learned and grown around my relationship with my consciousness being able to inhabit space around me, my consciousness, just awareness, being able to inhabit the trees or the plants or the animals or the structure of the house, anything around me, has come more and more through me unraveling all of the ticking time bombs inside of myself that have created an entire ecosystem of noise within me that prevent myself from being able to feel that sense of intimate connection with everything around me. Being able to recognize the signature of consciousness in my own universe here with everything that is perceived to be external from me. And so peace then, in my experience, feels a little bit more and more like the ringing of this little bell, like everything's ringing this little bell. Everything's ringing this little bell. It's the same bell. It's just one bell. Talking about inner warfare and conflict, my stomach is grumbling because I didn't really have much of a breakfast this morning. I'm joking and talking about inner bombs going off, and my stomach is just erupting, signaling hunger. So for these final minutes, what do I want to say? I'll give a little snapshot. Part of why this was one of the keys that I had a deep experience with, where early on where I had a deep experience with, where I was like, I don't know if I'll ever have as deep of an experience with anything else after that one. It was a profound, I will say it was a profound shift within myself as I journeyed with this key, where I sensed truly the dissolution of my skin, like the dissolution of the boundary layer within myself. There's words within the book around the key, and specifically the city of peace, and talking about, I believe it's this key, it's talking about the Tibetan rainbow body. Let me see. Building the body of glory. So talk about, yeah. The ultimate boundary is our skin, and one effect of this city can be mutations in the skin. These mutations affect the way in which skin cells trap light, so that the skin of someone manifesting the city can appear to be translucent. This is the more extraordinary phenomenon of what the ancients called the rainbow body, or the body of glory. As our skin cells learn to capture light, our digestive system will gradually become defunct, since light contains the ultimate nutrients for the subtle body. Maybe that's why my stomach is grumbling, because it's saying, hey, I want food, I want nutrients. And I'm entering into the acidic territory, and my body is saying, no, give us light. But I have, sadly, not direct sunlight on me right here, so maybe I need to go stand in the sun. So, take what you wish from this. I do believe that this archetype, this key, and part of this journey with peace is the ultimate dissolution of boundaries within ourselves, and the borders within ourselves. And, the concept of this, like, open borders future, everybody love everybody, open borders, like the idea of a separate nation state is an illusion. It's like, yes, and we are one species, one humanity, one earth. Yes, and if our pathway to open borders and all of that stuff becomes a journey of complete repression, and a journey of being, over attentive, committing, acts of warfare inwardly upon ourselves in the process, that's not it. And equally holding rigidly to those borders by being trigger happy is also not it. So all to say, as they would say, growing up, being a member of the Catholic Church, the phrase, peace be with you. Peace be with you. I'm going to reclaim that phrase from the toxic programming of that whole universe, and actually just say it from my heart, may peace be with you. And whatever that looks like for you today. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's fun this morning. I'll catch you next Tuesday. And ta-ta for now. Peace out.